Hello. What if the quietest girl in school was the one person you should have never messed with? This is the story of Amira, a black high school student who was bullied, targeted, and humiliated day after day. Her classmates thought she had no power, no voice. They locked her out of classrooms, destroyed her belongings, called her names that sting long after the bell rings. But what they didn't know, she wasn't alone. And when they went too far, her silence turned into something they couldn't control and couldn't stop. Watch until the very end. Because justice doesn't always come from teachers or principals. Sometimes it comes from somewhere much deeper. And this time, it's personal. Roosevelt High was the kind of place where silence had weight. It crept through hallways like a rumor, sat between desks like a second student. And for Amira Taylor, silence had become a second language. It was how she survived. 16 years old, tall for her age, with skin like rich amber and deep, thoughtful eyes she rarely lifted from her notebook, Amira was used to moving quietly. She kept her curls pinned back into a soft puff, always neat. Her clothes were simple, pressed. Her backpack was organized, her grades pristine. She wasn't loud, wasn't disruptive, didn't stand out. And somehow, that made her a target. It started small. A chair accidentally pulled away just as she went to sit. A snide whisper behind her, "Here comes the scholarship case." An eye roll from the girls who thought they owned the hallway. But the moment it turned from teasing into something colder, Amira knew it. She was being chosen. It was Thursday morning. The air outside was wet with fog and last night's rain. Amira had been sitting in second-period literature when her stomach turned sharply, that same twist she'd had since 5th grade, whenever stress spilled over into pain. She slipped a hall pass from the teacher's desk and walked briskly to the nurse's office, already knowing the drill. Drink water, lie down for a few minutes, breathe. By the time she returned, the bell had already rung. She was 4 minutes late. She knocked gently on the classroom door. Through the glass, Ms. Jensen, pale, wiry, eyes sharp as knitting needles, looked up. She frowned. Then, slowly, she stood and crossed the room. Amira lifted the pass. "Sorry. You're late," Ms. Jensen snapped. Doors closed. "I had a pass," Amira replied, voice calm but tight. "I went to the nurse." Ms. Jensen didn't look at the paper. Her fingers tapped the doorframe once, twice. "You can take it to the office," she said, her voice colder now. "You know the policy. Don't argue." Behind her, a cluster of students watched with barely hidden delight. Amber and Kinsey sat in the second row, their manicured hands covering half-smiles. Tarek, lounging with his hoodie pulled halfway down his forehead, grinned at Amira like she was a punchline he didn't have to say aloud. The door clicked shut. Amira stood still for a full 5 seconds. The hallway buzzed faintly with fluorescent light. She could feel her ears burn, but she blinked it back. No tears. Not here. She turned and walked away, footsteps soft against the linoleum. Third period came next, biology. She entered through the side door just as the final bell rang. Her backpack was tied on her shoulder, her arms full of folders and notes. As she passed the lockers, she barely saw the blur move behind her. A sharp shoulder jabbed her from the left. Her folders burst from her grip, papers flying like startled birds. Her science packet slid across the floor, her annotated chapters scattered near the stairwell. "Oops," Kinsey said sweetly, stepping back with faux innocence. "Didn't see you there." Roadblock. Amber snorted behind her. Maybe she blends in with the floor. Amira knelt slowly, methodically gathering her things. She didn't speak. Kinsey leaned in, eyes sparkling. "Don't forget this," she said, stepping on one of Amira's loose pages, her biology essay. A dark heel print smeared the last paragraph. Amira's fingers curled tightly around her notebook, knuckles pale. She said nothing. That was the rule. Her father always told her, "They want your reaction. Don't give it." Tarek, passing by, tossed in his 2 cents with a low chuckle. "Man, why's she always walking around like she's somebody's CEO? Bet her daddy drives Uber." Then, under his breath, "Probably carries a gun too." More laughter, just loud enough to sting. A teacher passed by, saw the paper on the ground, saw Kinsey smirking, saw Amira kneeling, said nothing. The bell rang again, louder this time. Amira stood, held her books against her chest, and kept walking. She didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside her, something quiet and sharp, began to shift. Biology class moved slowly, the way it always did on foggy mornings. The kind of slow where even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz with boredom. Amira sat in the second-to-last row, 1 seat away from the window. She liked it there, not too close to the front where I stayed on you, and not too far back where jokes got thrown like gum wrappers. She took notes quietly, writing in her soft looping print, her hand still trembling faintly from the hallway. The paper Kinsey had stepped on was now tucked neatly into her folder, a heel-shaped smudge dragging through the final paragraph. She hadn't said a word to the teacher. It didn't matter. Miss Roman would have just sighed, maybe raised an eyebrow. But she wouldn't have asked questions. Not ones that led to answers no one wanted to write down. Halfway through class, a folded note slid onto her desk. Amira blinked. She hadn't seen where it came from, but the corners were pressed sharp and tight, like it had been folded with intent. She hesitated, then opened it with quiet fingers. In thick block letters, it read, "Bet you still think you're better than US." There was no signature, no drawing, just the message, glaring and simple. She stared at it for a moment, then folded it again, even tighter, and slid it into the side pocket of her backpack. She didn't tear it up, didn't throw it away. She saved it. Lunch was worse. Amira usually sat at the back corner of the cafeteria, not alone, but close enough. A few students she'd worked with on science projects would sometimes nod her way, maybe slide over a tray in solidarity, but no one stayed long. She made people uncomfortable, though she couldn't figure out why. She never talked about herself, never flaunted her grades, never corrected people, even when they were wrong. But somehow, her silence was louder than 1,000 voices. That day, as she passed the third row of tables, her foot slipped. She hit the ground hard, her tray crashing beside her, macaroni and milk skidding into a sticky puddle. For a second, no one moved. Then laughter erupted from behind her. Amber's voice rang out like a bell. "Damn, she even walks like she don't belong here." Kinsey snorted. "She needs one of those warning signs, caution, wet floor, dry personality." Tarek clapped once, mock applause echoing through the room. "Better mop that up, janitor." Amira sat up slowly. Her palm was burning, her leg damp with spilled milk. She looked around. A few students stared, unsure whether to help or keep eating. No one reached out. Only one person, a boy she didn't know well from drama club, met her eyes for longer than a second. He looked away. She stood up without a word, picked up her tray, and walked calmly to the trash can. Her jeans stuck to her thigh, cold and sticky. Her ankle throbbed where it had twisted beneath her. No staff came over. No teacher addressed the crowd. Because this wasn't a fight. It wasn't a punch or a slap. It was invisible, and that's what made it safe. By last period, the fire in Amira's chest had turned into something colder. She moved like a ghost through the hallway. Her shoes squeaked faintly from the milk. Her bag was heavy on her shoulder, and her curls had begun to frizz from the damp air. She turned into the bathroom just before the final bell rang. It was empty, except for the sound of running water, someone at the sink. Amber stood there, her lip gloss shining, fingers adjusting her baby hairs in the mirror. When she saw Amira, she didn't flinch. She just smirked. "Well, if it isn't Miss National Honor Society." Amira said nothing, walking to the last stall. But before she could close the door, Amber spoke again. "You ever wonder why nobody likes you?" The door paused mid-swing. "It's not 'cause you're smart. Smart is fine. People like smart." Amira closed the stall slowly. "It's because you think you're white." The words dropped like stones. "You walk around here like you're on a college brochure. All quiet and polite and stuck up, with your little perfect backpack and your shoes from Target like you're too good for us." Amira stepped out. She didn't raise her voice, didn't make a scene, but her eyes locked on Amber's in the mirror. And for the first time that day, she spoke. "I think I'm tired." Amber raised an eyebrow. "Tired of what?" Amira's voice was calm. "Tired of you assuming you know me. Tired of being small so you feel big. Tired of being quiet so you can be loud." Amber laughed. "Oh, sweetie, you haven't seemed loud." She turned to face her, arms folded. "You want to keep pushing? Go ahead. Keep acting better than us. Just don't cry when the door gets slammed in your face." And with that, she walked out, leaving a trail of perfume and venom. Amira stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself. The bathroom lights buzzed overhead. Her curls were frizzy. Her eyes rimmed red. Her backpack strap had left a dent in her shoulder. But she was still standing, still here. And behind the quiet stare, something sharper was growing. Not rage, not vengeance. Focus. Friday mornings at Roosevelt High always carried a strange energy, part anticipation, part survival. Students moved faster in the halls, eager for the weekend. Teachers grew more impatient, and the intercom announcements dragged longer than usual. But this Friday felt different. Amira woke up that morning with a dull ache behind her eyes. Not from sickness, but from the weight she'd been carrying all week. The silence, the slights, the snickers, the fall in the cafeteria. Amber's bathroom threat still echoed in her mind, not because it scared her, but because of how confident it was. As if Amber knew she'd get away with whatever she was planning next. And she was right. It happened at 9:32 a.m. Third period had just begun, and Amira was called out of class for a routine locker inspection. Random check, the hall monitor said with a shrug, handing her the pink slip. She didn't question it. No one ever did. She walked the length of the corridor toward her locker, number 218, the one she'd had since freshman year. She knew every scuff on its gray-blue door, every chip in the paint. When she got there, she froze. The lock was gone. In its place was a zip tie, holding the door ajar. A foul, rotting smell spilled into the hallway like a slow-moving fog. A few students passing by stopped, gagged, and backed away. Amira's books were soaked, dripping with what looked like milk and sticky orange soda. Her laptop case had been sliced open, the fabric dangling like torn skin. Her spiral notebooks had been shredded, their pages mixed with clumps of cafeteria food. Someone had smeared peanut butter on the inside door and written in mustard, "She don't belong here." It was in all caps. Big, looping letters. Kenzie's handwriting. Impossible to miss. A group of students had gathered by now, phones raised, not to help, but to record. "That's foul," someone muttered. "Yo, is that her locker?" another whispered. Amira didn't move, didn't blink. She stood there in complete stillness, the chaos framing her like a painting. Then laughter. Amber and Kenzie stood 20 feet down the hall, arms crossed, like spectators at a show they'd bought front row seats for. Kenzie raised her phone and snapped a photo, not even trying to hide it. Amira turned toward them slowly, her eyes empty of expression. No rage, no tears, just calculation. It was over in seconds. No security came. No staff intervened. Eventually the janitor, Mr. Boone, shuffled over with a mop and a trash bag. He didn't say a word, just handed her a pair of rubber gloves and looked away. That was the final straw. Not the milk, not the peanut butter, not even the message. It was the way everyone looked past her, like she wasn't real. She got home late that day, not because she stayed after school, but because she'd stopped walking halfway and sat down on a bench near the park. Her backpack was empty now, her books destroyed, her mind heavy. She hadn't told her parents anything. Not yet. They worked long hours. Her mother Dana ran logistics for an international shipping firm. Her father Henry consulted for a security agency he rarely talked about. Their house was quiet, always clean, always calm. Problems didn't enter the front door unless they were brought in. That night at dinner, she sat across from her parents, eating slowly. The TV played quietly in the background, muted news anchors mouthing urgent headlines that no one was really listening to. "You look tired," her mother said gently, slicing her salmon. "I'm fine," Amira replied. Her father looked up from his phone. "Everything good at school?" Amira hesitated. For a moment, the words nearly came out. But then she remembered. This wasn't their burden. She'd handled everything so far. Quietly, calmly, alone. "Yeah," she said finally. "Just long day." They believed her. Why wouldn't they? She never gave them a reason not to. But later that night, she sat at her desk, looking at her destroyed laptop. The screen was cracked, the charger gone. On the desk beside it sat her biology notebook, soaked, unreadable. And suddenly, something broke. Not loudly, not with sobs or screams. It broke inward. She got up, walked to her closet, and pulled out an old shoebox. Inside were things she kept hidden, notes from teachers, awards, thank you letters from community centers she'd volunteered at. Proof that she mattered, that she had worth. Tucked beneath it all was a worn envelope. Her father had given it to her 2 years ago, during one of their rare, real talks. He'd said, "If someone ever really crosses the line, and I mean really, open this." She had never opened it. Until now. Inside was a card. A black business card with raised silver lettering. No name, just a number. On the back, a handwritten message in her father's neat script. "Tell them it's Henry's daughter." That's all. She stared at it, then picked up her phone. She didn't call the school, didn't call the police, didn't call her friends. She called the number. A man answered. Deep voice. No greeting. Just, yes. There was a pause. Then Amira said, calmly, "This is Henry's daughter. I need help." The line was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then the man said, "Understood." What happened? The man on the phone didn't ask for details. He didn't ask for names. Didn't ask for the school's address. He only said, "Understood." Expect silence for 72 hours. After that, things began. Then the line went dead. Amira stared at her phone. Her heartbeat had slowed. Not because she was calm, but because something inside her had settled. It wasn't rage. Not anymore. Rage burns too quickly. This was something colder. Heavier. Like standing in the eye of a hurricane. She slipped the card back into the envelope, slid it beneath her dresser, and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, she slept straight through the night. Monday came. Roosevelt High looked the same on the outside. Yellow brick, flags flapping half-heartedly in the breeze, a parking lot full of idling sedans and sleepy students. Inside, however, something had changed. At 8:03 a.m., Principal Walsh walked into his office to find his desktop frozen. The screen blinked black and green, pulsing in cycles. He tried to reboot. Nothing. At 8:10 a.m., the school's Wi-Fi crashed completely. By 8:17, the attendance system had gone offline. The digital gradebooks locked every teacher out of their rosters. Email access disappeared. Even the bell system began misfiring, ringing at random, some periods starting 5 minutes early, some not at all. No one knew what was happening. But Amira had a quiet guess. Kinsey first noticed it during third period. She was scrolling through her phone beneath her desk, a ritual she had down to an art, when her screen glitched. Her camera roll flashed, then blinked out. A moment later, her lock screen changed. A black background. No icons. Just a phrase in white, centered. You wrote it in mustard. Now it's written in code. She stared at the screen, confused. Tried to restart. Nothing. Then a photo flashed, only for a second. A still shot from the school hallway security camera. Kinsey, standing beside locker 218, holding a bottle of soda, her fingers uncapped. Then darkness. She dropped the phone. What the hell? Amber, seated beside her, was frantically refreshing her phone too. Something's wrong with mine, she hissed. All my apps are gone. Tarek's voice came from behind them. My Xbox account's locked. It says, terms violation. I didn't even do anything. No one connected the dots. Not yet. But Amira sat 2 rows away, watching, saying nothing. After lunch, Ms. Jensen tried to log into her gradebook, only to find an error message staring back at her. Access revoked pending review. She called IT. The line didn't even ring. She walked down to the main office, irritation growing, until she saw a woman in a dark blue blazer already seated at the front desk, a thin laptop in front of her, several folders neatly arranged. Who's that? Ms. Jensen asked the secretary, whispering. The secretary shrugged, nervous. I don't know. She said she's an external compliance consultant. From where? She didn't say. Ms. Jensen hesitated, then cleared her throat and approached. Excuse me, I'm Lisa Jensen, English department. There seems to be a... The woman looked up. Cool eyes. No smile. I know who you are, she said calmly. Please check your personal email. We've sent you a summary of reviewed communications. Ms. Jensen blinked. Reviewed? You'll want to read it. Especially the part about your comments on undisciplined behavior patterns and how they correlate to certain households. Lisa's throat tightened. She opened her phone and froze. They had her emails. Old ones. Ones she'd written after long days, venting in private to a colleague she'd once trusted, the kind of colleague who now seemed to have forwarded those messages somewhere else. She looked up, but the woman in the blazer was already back to typing, as if nothing had been said. That night, at home, Kinsey's mother stormed into her bedroom. Why is your father getting calls from his clients saying someone sent them pictures of your messages? Kinsey sat up, confused. What messages? Screenshots. From your phone. Messages with language I don't even want to repeat. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? Your father could lose his license. I didn't send anything. I mean, I did, but it was private. Someone must have hacked me. Her mother's voice dropped cold. You think anything's private when you write it down? When you post it? When you're recorded? Kinsey opened her mouth, but she had no answer. And no one, not even her father, could stop what was coming next. By Wednesday, Tariq's social accounts were gone. Not just deleted, blacklisted. His posts flagged for violent content, even though nothing he said was technically violent. But the private comments? The DMs calling Amira gun-happy and the next school shooter? Those were real. And someone had archived them all. His guidance counselor called him in with a printout in hand. His college applications were flagged. He'd lost his early admission to Lincoln State. Tariq sat in the office, staring at the floor. He didn't laugh anymore. And Amira? She walked through the hallways like nothing had changed. Except everything had. The looks had stopped. The whispers disappeared. The push in the hallway never came. No one touched her locker. Because it was empty. She didn't need it anymore. Her books lived at home. Her laptop had been replaced. Quietly. Expensively. The only thing she carried now was a new ID badge clipped to her hoodie, one she'd been given by the woman in the navy blazer before she left that morning. It wasn't for school. It was for access. Amira had made the call. And now, the storm had arrived. Not loud. Not messy. Just surgical. Because justice doesn't always come in courtrooms or protests. Sometimes, it comes with silence and a shadow network that never forgets. By the start of the following week, Roosevelt High had changed. Not on the outside, the bricks still flaked in the same places, the flags still fluttered tiredly in the parking lot, the cafeteria still served soggy pizza on Wednesdays. But inside, something had shifted. People walked differently. Conversations paused when Amira passed by. The same students who once snickered now lowered their eyes. Not in fear, but in awareness. As if they were just now realizing who she had always been. Amira didn't gloat, didn't smile smugly or raise her voice. That wasn't her way. She still sat in the same back row desk in English. Still packed her lunch in the same soft-sided bag. Still walked with her head slightly bowed, curls brushed back in a neat puff. But there was something new about her. Stillness, refined into presence. Kinsey stopped coming to school the following Thursday. Rumors circled fast. She'd transferred. Her parents were pulling strings to get her into a charter, something about emotional distress. But Amira didn't chase the gossip. She had what she needed: space. Amber, for all her noise, had gone silent. She still roamed the halls with the other girls, but something had dimmed behind her eyes. Once, she passed Amira at the vending machine and hesitated. Like she wanted to say something. A sorry, maybe, or an explanation. But she didn't. Amira didn't ask for one. Some apologies aren't meant to be spoken. Some just arrive too late. Ms. Jensen's classroom now had a different teacher. A young woman, fresh from a graduate program, who greeted every student at the door by name. The district had said it was a routine staffing adjustment. Amira knew better. But she never said a word. She simply walked in, sat down, and opened her notebook. The new teacher gave her a smile, genuine, unknowing, and kept moving. Sometimes change begins with removal, but real change is what comes after. Spring arrived in slow ripples, green creeping along the edges of trees, soft breezes through cracked classroom windows. And with it, the announcement: nominations for the annual Excellence in Leadership Award. It had always gone to athletes, club presidents, the outspoken, the loud. Never the quiet girl with the high GPA and the perfect attendance. But that year, something different happened. Amira's name was read first. She didn't nominate herself. She didn't even know who did. But the day the results were posted, she found a folded sheet of paper tucked into the side of her locker, crisp white, no doodles, no handwriting except two simple words in bold marker. Thank you. No signature. Just acknowledgement. And somehow, that meant more than any trophy. The ceremony was held in the auditorium, same as always. Folding chairs lined in crooked rows, teachers lining the back wall with clipboards and tired eyes. Parents with cameras, flashes of pride. Amira sat in the second row, her parents on either side. Dana wore a navy dress, pearl studs, a smile like armor. Henry wore his quiet gray suit, hands folded in his lap, watching everything with that cool, calculated stillness she'd inherited. When her name was called, the applause was polite, then grew. A few students stood. More joined. She hadn't expected that. She walked to the podium slowly, carefully, not rushed, not afraid. She accepted the plaque, posed for the photo, and took the mic. Her speech was short. No grand call-out. No confessions. No need to name her scars. Just this. Sometimes, the world tells you to shrink, to go quiet, to survive quietly. But survival isn't living. I learned that the hard way. So if anyone here feels small, I see you. And I hope one day, the world will see you too. She left the stage to a standing ovation, not for what she said, but for who she'd become. That night, she sat on her bedroom floor, the award leaning against her bookshelf. She held the old black card in her hands, the one with the silver numbers. She turned it over, reread the message. Tell them it's Henry's daughter. She smiled softly, then took a lighter from her desk drawer, walked outside to the fire pit her father used to roast marshmallows in the fall, and held the edge of the card to the flame. It caught slowly, a small blue flicker at first, then orange, then blackened at the corners. She watched it burn to ash. She didn't need it anymore, because now they knew. Roosevelt High would never be the same again, not because of what happened to Amira, but because of what Amira refused to let happen anymore. No more corner of the hall bullying. No more whispered cruelty. No more systems that protected silence over truth. They say power is loud, but sometimes power is the girl who walks through the storm and leaves it changed behind her. They thought she was weak. They thought she'd stay silent. But Amira? She had power they never saw coming. And when she moved, everything changed. Comment justice if you watch to the end. Hit like if you've ever been underestimated. Because sometimes, the quiet ones write the loudest endings. Goodbye.